Welcome back. Another episode of Bluebird Territory. I'm Mitch Bannon, cover the Jays for The Athletic, joined as always with Kevin Pillar and Ricky Romero. And I'm just gonna send my thoughts to everyone back home in Canada right now. I I watched the game in the media room at the complex with a couple other writers. We were not happy, but there was at least one person on the premises who was pretty fired up about the result of the Canada-U.S. gold medal game, and that was George Springer. He had his jersey on. He was rocking around. Took live batting practice in the jersey. He was hooting and hollering the whole time. Fellas, Ricky, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts on the game?
Oh man, what an awesome game! I was texting with a group of buddies and just saying, man, regardless of the outcome, I think we've just been blessed with an awesome hockey game. And I know you and I talked about it the other day about 3-on-3 overtime off air, and I was like, oh, maybe this looks pretty cool. And you're like, actually, no. And then the more I kind of did my research on it and realized, like, man, like, yeah, this is not cool. Even if Canada would have won. And I think that's the argument for a lot of people right now online. They're like, "Well, if Canada would have won, you guys wouldn't have had a problem with it." I didn't. I was just watching because I'm a fan of just the sport, and I feel like everyone was. I'm still good friends with Shea Weber from the 2010 team, and was texting with him throughout the game, and just what it means to you guys, right? I mean, the U.S. obviously has many other sports from football to baseball, and hockey really isn't a sport that's talked about here. But the fact that they were able to bring down, the mighty Canadians in this big Olympic game was pretty cool. And it's been what, like 40 years since they've won a gold medal, so it was a big deal. And just watching the game and just being at the edge of your seat last night. I woke up at 5 a.m. I actually set an alarm, 5 a.m., and I was ready to roll at like 5:15. I mean, I don't wake up for very many other things, but a sporting event like that kind of spectacle was really awesome to watch.
Yeah, when Canada didn't score on that 5-on-3, I thought it was over, and ultimately they came back and tied the game. But for people listening to our show, it is the biggest challenge we have as baseball players that are born in the United States. Just because we want the Americans to win doesn't mean we hate Canada. Yes, we play for the Toronto Blue Jays, and we love everything Canadian when we are there, and we represent Canada with everything we have, our entire heart. But we are still Americans at the end of the day. And when it comes to a gold medal game, the country that all of us would love to represent, like Ernie Clement in the World Baseball Classic, um, it's a difficult time to be a Toronto Blue Jay during kind of Olympic time, Pan Am games, anything where countries go against each other. So good for George Springer going out there. Obviously, a huge hockey fan. That's why he wears the green cleats and the green batting gloves to kind of represent, his team in his hometown of Connecticut. Um, yeah, it's a tough time to be a
Well,
American playing for a Canadian team.
my wife isn't obviously a huge hockey fan, but like you can tell after they lost, it's like, oh no. And I mean, even though she doesn't follow it, she knows how much it means to everyone in Canada, and this is the sport. So congratulations, Team USA. It was an awesome game, but I do wish they would have ended the game 5-on-5 and just, hey, may the best team win.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ricky. Maybe it's just salty, but I think that there is some documentation of me having that take before before the final overtime. But we won't dwell on it too long. I don't want to keep poking at the Canadians. I know we're all pretty down bad, so we're gonna get back to the Blue Jays. A little bit better vibes than the Olympic hockey right now, and we got some new segments that we're gonna try to keep consistent to give you guys a little bit of a roadmap of the show. In the first one, we're gonna start off by taking flight. And our taking flight, our opening segment today, we're kind of reacting to the first couple spring games. And one guy who I've kind of had my eye on all spring because he's been lighting up live at bats. And you look at his numbers from last year and you put those over 140 games, and Daulton Varsho would have had one hell of a season. And he goes oppo in his first spring game. Kevin, what are you looking for from Varsho this year, and what could be his last year with the Jays?
Well, yeah, I mean, I love spring training because it's a time to definitely overreact when guys do something well, and you obviously underreact when they don't do things well because it's spring training. But I think just being around the team last year and watching Varsho play every day, obviously an incredible defender. I just don't think he's reached his potential, his maximum potential as an offensive player. I think his swing is so built for getting the ball in the air, especially to the pull side. And I think there's probably a little bit of bitterness last year of the way that his season ended, coming up in that situation, hitting that ground ball to second base where maybe he felt like he was a little bit too reliant on pulling the ball. So I can almost guarantee there was a conversation, with him, the hitting department, and getting him to be a little bit more of a complete hitter, being able to drive the ball to the opposite field, much like you saw, Barger do later in the postseason run, and that's where he felt like he really took off as an offensive force, is being able to, in certain situations when the game doesn't require you to pull the ball, to be able to go to the opposite field. And sure enough, first at bat, was it first at bat? Second at bat. I think he had 2 hits. So it might have been his second at bat. He goes up there, takes 98 middle away, drives one out to left center field. Obviously a great sign for him. And I just think he's a guy that Blue Jay fans may have to really, really enjoy this year, because we know the history of Scott Boras guys and clients that typically they don't negotiate contracts before free agency, and there's a chance he leaves. And I think Blue Jay fans, long before I was roaming center field, have just been kind of spoiled with having really good defensive center fielders. It's just kind of in their DNA. And Varsho's, working himself to the top of that list of one of the best defensive center fielders with so much more potential offensively. And he's obviously with the right hitting department to really, really just unleash him. And I expect him to have a monster year.
Yeah, and I also think that to your point, KP, a little bit about when you sit back in the offseason, you sit back and you're like, as a ball player, and the one thing you say to yourself, all right, what can I get better at? What can I be better at? And I think him going into free agency, he wants to be a complete hitter and a complete baseball player. And I think that's the biggest thing, that you go into free agency, you're right. I mean, there's a possibility they might lose him to free agency. So you're thinking numbers, you're thinking, hey, I want to get paid, and rightfully so. I mean, he does he's a big part of this lineup, and you're right. I can see him having a big year and being unleashed on the offensive side.
Yeah, I think the one interesting thing with Varsho is he doesn't have to like do anything he didn't do last year. Even like if he has a little more oppo power, or if he gets on base a little more, that's great. But yeah, if he just stays healthy, you look at the potential free agents for next year. You can make a case that Varsho is like going to be the best position player free agent on the market next year. And when Scott Boras is your agent, that's not a bad place to be. You usually end up making quite a bit of money. But we'll get to some more reactions from the early spring games after a message from one of our sponsors.
Hey, sometimes we do a little game on Foul Territory called Role Play. It's not what you think. We're just picking up our phones and we're talking as if we're somebody in baseball. But if you'd like that phone to be a little bit cheaper for making phone calls, who should you call, Kratz?
Mint Mobile, because you get all the same speed with a tiny little price.
Same coverage, tiny price. Ready to stop paying more than you have to? New customers can make the switch today, and for a limited time, get unlimited premium wireless for just $15 per month. Switch now at mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required, $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Over 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Save money. Get after it, FT fam.
Ricky, I saw you kind of live tweeting the Jays' first spring game, and you were commenting on some of the pitchers. Adam Macko also kind of really impressed me with the velo he showed there. Were there any takeaways on your side from the pitching side in those first couple games?
Yeah, man. I mean, I really liked it. I mean, I think anytime you see 95, 97 from the left side, it opens your eyes. And, I feel like I think the biggest issue with him has been control. And looking at his numbers in the minor leagues, he walks a lot of guys. And I think for me personally, as someone who went through it, I remember Brad Arnsberg pulling me aside in 2009 when I made the team out of spring training. And he said, all right, we have to learn how to harness this. And that's what you're hoping the Toronto Blue Jays are going to do with Adam Macko. I know he came in with a lot of expectations. He was a big part of that trade to that sent Teoscar Hernandez to the Seattle Mariners. And when you watch him, you're just like, okay, how do we harness this great stuff that we have here? I wish I would have seen his curveball a little bit more, because I think he threw one or two that were really sharp, and then went back to that slider. I think the slider can be a little sharper from what I saw on TV. I wasn't sure if it was a changeup that he was cutting or a slider that he was throwing, but I think somebody sent me a chart on social media and it said it was a slider. And I wasn't too high on it. But again, when you flash 95, 97 from the left side, it's going to catch your attention. And his story is pretty cool, man. I was reading up on him last night. A guy who was born in Slovakia. I mean, what are the odds you're going to see a Slovakian baseball player? And he actually went to a baseball academy in Boxa, Alberta. I had a chance to go there and speak, and it's in a little tiny town, and it's all baseball. So his path to this level has been pretty awesome. And hopefully, I mean, he's on the 40-man roster, so hopefully he makes a name for himself. I know he's going to pitch for Team Canada in the WBC, so you hope that he gets those chances and gets the proper work in. Obviously, that's the biggest thing you worry about when you're a young prospect and you're going to go play for your country and stuff like that. You want to make sure you're still getting the work done, because this type of stuff, you have a guy like Pete Walker, it's very valuable. And if somebody's able to harness his stuff, man, I just remember Vernon Wells pulling me aside and saying, you have to realize how good your stuff is. And if you don't realize that, you're not going to make it. So I hope somebody's talking in his ear about, hey, trusting his stuff and just letting him know that hitting is really, really hard. And when you're coming, again, from 95, 97 from the left side, and it's coming from a different angle, it's tough to hit.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue into the thing that stood out to me. And obviously, he was a teammate of mine. I faced him many times, but Tyler Rogers, I think just Toronto Blue Jay fans, Canadians, maybe probably not as familiar with his work, but getting the first glimpse of what he does, and you're like, man, this guy's making how much money to throw from there? But this guy is the most reliable reliever in the major leagues, does not give up the ball in the air. He's a ground ball machine, and he is an absolute workhorse. And I think there was a conversation about when he came off, hopefully you're going to get, 60, 70 games out of him. And he's like, probably more. And it's the truth. I mean, he'll take the ball every single day. That's what makes him so valuable, is it's just not a lot of wear and tear on your arm throwing from that angle. And you're probably sitting at home being like, how do major league hitters not hit a guy throwing 82 miles an hour? It's just a unique angle that you don't see, you don't work on. The ball moves. He has the ability to throw a couple different pitches from that angle. And, we talk about unique angles. Imagine going from Savage to Rogers. It's probably going to be the largest gap in major league history. And it sounds crazy to even talk about it, but I'm sure there's someone out there that has numbers on that. And when that happens, it's going to just light up the X world. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I think Rogers is. I've made a point of watching every single one of his live bullpens and his bullpen sessions the last couple of days, because this is like the one time for us, the media, where we get to like stand behind the catcher and like actually watch these pitches come in. And I don't know how anybody ever barrels up a ball against him. You got to just be like getting lucky. And he is like throwing every day. It seems like it's not every single day, but it's every single time there's a live BP, Tyler Rogers is out there already. I wouldn't, if you add up like these kind of sessions, the innings he throws, this guy must be throwing like 250 times over the course of a year. It's insane. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons the Jays got him, is because they need someone who they can just go to and to get a ground ball whenever they want. But Kevin, kind of on that and on our discussion of Mako earlier, Dave Popkins, I think it was to my colleague Keegan Matheson, gave a quote about Jesus Sanchez that I think we all kind of found a little interesting, basically saying when he went to Houston last year, they had some changes they wanted to make for him, but they didn't really jive. They're more like kind of preventing his weaknesses as opposed to embracing his strengths. And that's a very David Popkins line. It's a very Toronto Blue Jays line. Like their minor league pitching coaches are walking around with a quote on the back of their shirts that says, be great at what you're good at. So I'm curious what you think that means for Jesus Sanchez. What is that approach for like what they want to get out of him?
Yeah, I mean, I totally forgot that, behind the scenes, we talked about this, that I actually maybe even brought it up, but I'm glad we're talking about it, because that is so Toronto Blue Jays. That is so their hitting department. That's so their philosophy is, we get caught up in, as competitors and athletes, we get very self-conscious about the things that we don't do well. And sometimes that takes away from what we do really well. And sometimes we get caught in between. And obviously for a guy like Jesus Sanchez going over to Houston with a much different hitting philosophy, maybe somewhere like Miami he was previously, they were very concerned about the weaknesses he had, and it really took away from his strengths. And now going to Toronto Blue Jays, where they're like, hey, you were really good at this. It doesn't matter that you're not so good at this. Let's just really harness and focus on what you do really well, and we will make you better at that. And some of that has to do with approach, pitch selection. And I think the main reason they went out and acquired this guy, when I felt like, earlier on these shows, I talked about being a little bit confused about wanting to bring another left-handed outfielder into the mix, but they feel like there is so much untapped potential there. And if you bring a guy into your ecosystem and allow him to do what he's really good at and help him be even better at what he's good at, sky's the limit for this guy, because once again, this guy hits the ball extremely hard. Some minor fine-tune things, and maybe his approach, his setup, what he's trying to accomplish at the plate can really unlock this guy. And I think we can expect probably really, really big things from him.
Yeah, I think his first spring training home run, if he hits it like 500 feet, that's gonna go everywhere on social media. I can't wait for that one to come down. But we're gonna get to some more news. We're gonna talk about Eric Lauer on the other side of another ad break.
Trisha, I'm here at spring training where the games have started. The weather is beautiful, and soon enough, I'll be at the WBC with a stacked Team USA. Scooble, Skeens, Judge, Raleigh, Bobby Witt Jr. Where else would you rather get seats than on SeatGeek? The #1 rated ticketing app with over 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek. It's not just baseball. There's the NBA, concerts, festivals, and the World Cup are now on there as well, which would be great to be at.
And SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know that you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good and red means bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You can use code Territory10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so that you can use it later.
All right, guys, we're getting into another segment. I forget which one you two came up with this, but it was a good one. We're gonna make this a constant. It is called analysis. It's a little shout out to our Canadians, our silver medalist Canadians. So sorry again. I said I wouldn't bring it up, but this is an interesting one, and I'm kind of really curious to get your guys' take on. So Eric Lauer, over the last couple days, I've talked to him a couple times. He has brought up kind of his arbitration hearing. And actually, I'll take a little step back and give some more context. As everyone who watched the Blue Jays last year knows, Lauer was kind of like a savior in the middle of the season. He was a non-roster invite minor league guy that they needed a starter desperately in the middle of the season. He came in, and from June to the end of July was like posted the lowest ERA of any pitcher in the rotation. Obviously, the Jays acquire Shane Bieber. They do a little 6-man for a little, and Lauer goes to the bullpen where he stays. He throws almost 5 innings in that 18-inning World Series game. He was kind of like a do-it-all, embraced the role. Great comeback season for him after being in Korea and kind of out of the big leagues for a bit. But then this year, which will be his final year of Jays control, he's making it very clear in spring training that he wants to start. There seems to be 5, maybe 6 guys ahead of him, but he's saying he wants to be in the rotation. And he thinks that not being in the rotation for all of last year cost him his arbitration hearing. He filed at around $5.7 million. The Jays filed at $4.4 million. The Jays ended up winning the case. I'm going to put the quotes on the screen for the YouTube audience right now to see exactly what Eric was saying. But so I'll read them direct, just so it's not kind of my interpretation. But he said, being able to lock in mentally and physically as a starter, that is what's best for me. He later said the fact that I ended the year in the bullpen was probably what lost me my case. You guys have been around baseball and seen a bunch of your teammates go through this process. What do you make of kind of this push-pull of Lauer, who seems like a pretty clear team guy, also kind of sticking up for himself and what he wants right now? Kevin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the challenge with baseball, right? Is you want to be a good teammate, but you also want to do what's best for you and your family. And obviously, this is a perfect case to kind of, dive into a deeper analysis on what the arbitration process looks like and why players feel the way that they feel. Because, like you said, Eric Lauer, the best teammate you could ask for, what he did last year and his ability to do whatever the team needed to win a game. And nothing more evident than what he was able to do in that extra inning game and throw, 5 innings out of the bullpen, give their team a chance to win. Talk about a guy who came in as a non-roster invite to camp, makes the team, goes to the bullpen. They need a starter. He starts. He's arguably their best starter for a stretch period of time. They go out and acquire a guy, pushes him out of the rotation. You don't hear a peep out of him. So then you go into the offseason and you earn the right as a player to go to arbitration. And you believe you have a certain, value. The team thinks you have a certain value. And the challenge when it comes to the arbitration process is it becomes very black and white when you go to arbitration. Are you a starter or are you a bullpen guy? And the fact that Eric Lauer finished in the bullpen last year, made him more eligible as a bullpen guy. And when you're in that situation, your comps, the guys that you're being compared to, are people in a similar position to you. So clearly, starters make more money than relievers. So he got kind of pushed into this, bubble of guys, considering his, outings and numbers that were more aligned with bullpen guys than starter. And that's the challenge as a player is you earn the right to go to arbitration, but sometimes you feel like you have a certain value. The team has a certain value. And if those don't line up, then you go to a hearing. And that's where things get a little bit more challenging is when you go to a hearing, you have to go in there as a player and not say anything. And you're in there with your representation. The front office has their representation and they obviously have their arbitration, lawyer attorney in there, and you're arguing, who feels like they're right in this certain situation. And a lot of and in order for them to save money and prove that they're right, sometimes they have to say things that you probably as a player cannot unhear. And in this, circumstance, clearly there were some things that potentially the Blue Jay side said about Eric Lauer and maybe his lack of ability to start or him being a bullpen guy or whatever they needed to do or say in that situation to drive that price down to, match the salary that they felt like he was worth as opposed to what he was worth is probably why as a player I never went to arbitration. I was never in a situation where that gap between what I felt like my value was and what the team's value was worth me going to an arbitration case over. And I look back on my career, and if it was, would I have gone? I always kind of wanted to be Switzerland and kind of stay neutral because I didn't want to end up in a situation where, as a player, you go out there and do everything you can to help your team win and try to perform your best. And, before you go to arbitration, you hear all the great things that your team says about you and how valuable you are. And then that immediately gets flipped when you go into a meeting being like, well, he doesn't do this well and this well and this well, and he sucks and this and this and this. And do they mean all those things that they're saying? Potentially not, but they're trying to win a case. They're trying to save money here. And as a player, you might not be able to unhear that.
Yeah, I mean, someone who didn't have to go through arbitration either, I've heard all the stories. I've heard it all. I'm sure you've heard them all, KP. But Eric Lauer to me was a guy that I admire watching. Why? Because he's not a velocity guy. He's a guy that goes out and pitches, and that's what attracted to me watching him last season. And when you're a starter and you have a starter's mentality, the bullpen is tough. I did it towards the end of my career and it was not fun for me. I just didn't have those guys are just different in the bullpen. The phone rings and boom, they're ready to jump up and warm up. And when you have a starter's mentality, it's tough to get into that mode. And the way Eric Lauer handled it last season was to me about a as professional as you can handle something. I mean, the guy pretty much saved the bullpen. There's I think a few tweets of me from last season where I gave him a ton of credit, and the fact that he's coming into this season And as I read those quotes when I first read them, I was like, whoa, like this is not what you want to hear about a team that is obviously vibing and, and they have the right people in charge and everyone just seems to get along. But the more I like sat there and thought about it, I was like, you know what? This is a guy that's literally just want the shot at starting. Let me win a rotation spot. And I understand there's, 6 guys in front of me, but let me go out there and prove to you that I can start and be an asset to this team. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, he's sticking up for his own career, right? I mean, and rightfully so. He has that right to do that. And I think if he was a problem, you would have heard about it by now in the clubhouse and stuff like that. But John Schneider said, I mean, we need him. We need him. He's a valuable asset to have, and it's a tough situation. And obviously, when you have guys in front of you and you're trying to work your way up, you're just like, man, I thought I earned this right to maybe slot right into this rotation. It makes it tough for a player, but I think the fact that they're just, hey, let's just see where it goes. Again, we've talked about it at the beginning, I think episode 1 or 2 in this podcast. We said the rotation is not going to be 5 guys for the rest of the season. It just doesn't happen like that. So you really need depth, and he is a great depth guy to have in this rotation.
Yeah, I think I looked it up for the story I wrote. They used 15 different guys to start games last year. So if you're the 6th or 7th guy, you are going to be starting a couple games. I think, Ricky, off what you said there, I think Eric, yeah, he's had some quotes about wanting to start, but both him and John Schneider are kind of like saying mostly the right things. They're seemingly on the same page, which I think is important. They both are acknowledging, yeah, Eric wants to start. They're both acknowledging that if nothing happens, if no one gets hurt, if nothing changes, it might be a little bit of a decision at the end of March. And I think the decision is probably going to end up being Lauer's if at the end of spring training he is the 7th or 8th starter. If they brought in Max Scherzer and he's even a little further down the depth chart, he will have to then decide, do I turn this from me sticking up for myself, heading into a potential free agent year where I really want to kind of set myself up to take care of my family for the rest of their lives in free agency? He will have to decide if he wants to be kind of a swingman again for the Blue Jays and stay on a potential championship winning team, or say, hey, there's teams like the Minnesota Twins, Atlanta Braves, probably a bunch of other teams who Eric Lauer could be their number 3 starter. And it could turn from kind of sticking up for himself to a situation where both the team and player are going to have to make a decision on what they do. But we will see. It's still many weeks away. There's still many stubbed toes and hurt shoulders that could change that situation over the next couple weeks of spring training, and we will read and react as it comes. Once again, sorry to Canada. This is the only time I'm going to say this, but congrats to Jack Hughes and the Americans. That was a very good hockey game. We will no longer be talking about the Olympic gold medal game on future episodes of Bluebird Territory, but we'll be back later this week with another episode.